Hey everyone, and thanks for joining us for today's webcast, Earn It, Don't Buy It. I apologize for some technical difficulties that we are having right now, but we're just going to power on through it. I'm Kieran Wilson, Marketing Manager for Ignite Social Media, and I'm joined today by arguably two of the greatest minds in social media, Jim Tobin and Jay Baer. Jim is founder and president of Ignite Social Media. He's the author of Social Media as a Cocktail Party, an Amazon bestseller, and the newly released book, Earn It, Don't Buy It, the CMO's Guide to Social Media Marketing in a Post-Facebook World. Jay is president of Convince and Convert. He's a social media and marketing speaker and consultant, and author of the New York Times bestselling book, Utility, Why Smart Marketing is About Help, Not Hype, and co-author of The Now Revolution. Jay, thanks for joining us today.
My pleasure. If nothing else, we're the two smartest minds in social media on this call, so we'll at least start there.
That's true. I thought the key word in that was arguably. Arguably the best of minds.
I think we should have that argument.
We should make it on webcast.
Absolutely.
All right, just a few details before we get started. It's a 40-minute webcast. Jim and Jay will be leading questions and answers at the end of the call. The webcast is going to be a little bit different than what you're used to. It's going to be more of a moderated conversation, and we want the audience to participate as well. So ask us questions, share comments, and even challenge our ideas. You can do all of this on Twitter using the hashtag #EarnIt. So let's get to it. Jim, can you give us a quick 30-second overview of Earn It, Don't Buy It?
Sure. I mean, my last book was almost 6 years old now, and when I was thinking about the landscape and how much it's changed since 2007 when I started looking at the space and working in the space, I realized there's a bunch of things that people were doing wrong, and so I decided to think about what those things are, and they focus mostly on organic versus paid social media and being across multiple platforms and not just relying on Facebook.
And Jay, can you do the same thing? Give us a quick overview of Utility.
Utility is based on the premise that in this hyper-competitive messaging environment where companies are required to compete for attention line by line and pixel for pixel against our own friends and family members, that the way to break through that enormous clutter is to not shout louder, but it's to be truly and inherently useful. Utility is marketing so useful that people would pay for it if you asked them to. And companies of all types and sizes are employing that concept of very, very useful marketing to succeed in modern business.
And Jay, I like that New York Times icon there. Maybe Kieran, you could stick that on top of my book too. I think
I'll give you the layer. I've got it.
That'd be great. That'd be great.
It'd make my life easier. Thank goodness. All right. This is going to be a fast, free-flowing conversation. I'll be posing some questions to Jim and Jay, and we're just going to see where the conversation takes us. So let's get into it. Is social media marketing broken? Jay, in the first lines of his book, Jim says, it was the best of times, it was the worst of times. No, wait, that was Dickens. I cannot believe that I confused Jim.
It's a common mistake.
Yeah, I bet. Jim says social media marketing is broken. Do you agree with this?
No, I don't think social media marketing is broken per se. I just think that there are a number of marketers that are doing things that they believe will succeed, and they may succeed short-term, but have a long-term negative effect on their brand. I don't think social media is any more or less guilty of this than any other form of marketing that's come before. The reality is that marketers always kill the golden goose. Every time marketers have an opportunity, they overplay their hand, and that opportunity becomes less and less effective because it just becomes oversaturated and we're trying to squeeze blood from a stone.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of that, but I think a lot of the confusion comes from confusing marketing and advertising. And the 40, 50 years before social media was all about buying exposure. And the first 2 years of social were about earning exposure because there were no buying opportunities. And that's what we've gotten away from.
And speaking of buying, people are buying fans.
Yes, they are, and that's a real problem. And it's really short-sighted because people have been saying for years that fans are not a business objective, And I think everyone agrees to that, but then they take actions that don't seem to indicate that they really do believe it. This is actual data from a fan page that did a large fan acquisition buy. And you can see we used a couple different data points, an organic reach percent and organic interaction rate, and you can see how that plunges after they buy a large number of fans. And the major point here is fans are worthless if you cannot activate them. And activate might mean exposure to your message. Activate might mean getting them to click over to your website. It might mean getting them to sign up for an email. Of course, ultimately the goal being to buy your product. But if you can't reach them, which is the left column, and you can't get them to act, that's there's no point in having these fans. So why are we spending billions, literally billions, buying these fans that don't react? And similarly, we know, and this is data we did for Chrysler Group. So we looked at Chrysler, Jeep, Dodge, Ram, and Fiat. And we were able to track with ComScore the people who were exposed to our messages organically, meaning they just came across the newsfeed because we earned it, basically. And that's the left column. And the people who were exposed based on a paid buy, so sponsored stories, promoted posts, those sorts of things. And you can see the lift in visiting one of the Chrysler Group websites in the 4 weeks following. We have a big lift for organic. I think that's a 76% lift. And we have a small lift, I think that's 28% if I remember correctly, for paid. So paid works, but organic works 3 times better. And this is also true for likelihood to go to Google or Bing and search for key search terms on that brand. It's also true for likelihood to how long they stay on the site, how many pages they visit. So people who see these things organically, and it's part of the momentum effect or discovery and how you feel you came across content, it makes you engage with it on a deeper level if you feel like you found it. And if it's thrust upon you with a paid thing, you'll act if you're in the market, but you don't own it at the same level.
So paid versus owned, and it's kind of being smart about your strategy. And speaking of smart marketing is kind of what your book is all about, Jay, utility. Can you talk us through, you're an advocate for marketing is all about help and not hype. Do you think that's how we can sort of unbreak marketing?
Well, I think potentially so. And let me comment a second about the previous topic of buying fans.
Sure.
It's particularly egregious on Facebook because once somebody clicks that like button the first time, that doesn't mean that they are ever going to participate with you downstream. And so what marketers have to do, buying fans is obviously a problem as we see on this slide, but the bigger challenge is that strategically companies are thinking of fan acquisition and fan engagement as 2 different things, when in fact you have to think about it as a continuum. So what happens is, and this is a perfect example that you see on the screen here, is you go to all these links, whether it's a contest or buying fans or some other sort of false economy to bump up your numbers, and then you say, well, now how do we communicate with those people? You really have to think of it as, well, how do we get them and keep them, and consider that to be one approach as opposed to 2 different tactics. And smart organizations are getting there. They understand that Facebook in particular is kind of a gamed system, because even in the best of times, even if you're killing it on Facebook, if you publish something to your timeline, 5 to 15% of your own audience is going to see that content unless you pay to promote it. So it's a little bit of a situation.
And Jay, in your book, you bring up an interesting concept called, I think you call it social breakup, where there's actually, you're getting those likes, but people are leaving after that.
Yeah, actually, that's research from ExactTarget that put together 2 different reports called the social breakup, one for the U.S. and one for UK, part of their subscribers, fans, and followers series. And what they find is that you consistently have fan attrition and fan decay. That approximately 1 out of every 2 fans will eventually just either unfan you, or what happens most often is they just stop engaging with your content on Facebook, and as a result, you become fundamentally invisible to them. As I think probably everybody who's on this webinar knows, that Facebook is a self-fulfilling prophecy. So if I engage with content from Ignite Social Media, I'm going to continue to see content from Ignite social media. Conversely, if I don't engage with content from Ignite social media, Facebook will suppress those posts so that I don't see them. And so what really happens for you political science majors out there is it becomes sort of a pocket veto, is that even though you're still a fan of that brand, technically, you just stop seeing stuff from them. And that's where you get the, hey, you have 1,000 fans but only 150 of them see your post problem. And that's why Facebook really encourages brands to promote posts, to give them money so that you can actually expand that reach. But it's a dangerous game. I mean, the reality is, setting fan acquisition aside, if you really want to maximize the effectiveness of your own Facebook fan page, you almost have to have a paid program.
Yeah, that's true. It's absolutely true, and it's one of the frustrations that I think marketers have with Facebook, with the amount of dollars they've invested in building the space, and the 16% of fans still gets quoted, but no big page is seeing that anymore because of the tightening of the algorithm, not once but twice in the last year, 18 months, and I really think that's hurting Facebook. It sort of segues into what Kieran wants to talk about next, about how Facebook's problems with Facebook.
That's just what I wanted to talk about.
I understand that people are frustrated. Like, hey, I got all these fans, right? Whether I paid to get them or I got them organically, by some mechanism, your company has these fans, and now you can't reach those fans. I totally understand that frustration. I live it every day, but you can reach those fans. You just have to pay to do it. And I understand that a lot of companies feel like they were sort of bait and switched in that regard. But what did they think was going to happen? Like, Facebook was always going to be a free way to market to your customers forever? I mean, is your grasp of economics that poor that you felt like this was going to be a charity case? I mean, if you have a 1 million-person email list and you want to reach those people via email, ExactTarget is not going to send those emails for free. So why would Facebook allow you to reach those people for free? And if you don't think that Twitter is going to apply the same kind of algorithm at some point, you're crazy.
Well, and you do have the email analogy. If you've got a 16% open rate, you're not doing too bad. So you're reaching 16% of your fans via email too. But I think the frustration. Well, there's people like Mark Cuban who seem to be suddenly very surprised that he wasn't reaching 100% of his fans. But I think the more sophisticated marketers already knew it was about that 16%. And I think part of the frustration comes from it's not 16% anymore. They cut it to maybe 10, and now they've cut it to 5 to 8, and they've slowed down their news feed so much that even good content is struggling.
I agree. I've seen I'm not very good at Facebook on the fan page side for my own company. It's just not something that we prioritize. But I've seen our own engagement rate just plummet in the last 6 months. I either do something significantly different or blow it off and start doing Google+.
Yeah, so that's exactly what Jim's talking about in his book, the subtitled book, Social Media in a Post-Facebook World. So is Facebook really on its way out? Jim, it's an interesting prospect, and it's quite the statement. What do you mean by it?
Well, Facebook's advantage is that everyone's on Facebook, and the value of the social network increases exponentially with the volume of people on the social network, and so Facebook has a huge advantage, and I don't think people have an appetite for going and rebuilding their friend networks on Google Plus or Twitter or anywhere else. So that's an advantage Facebook should hold for several years. So I don't think I'm saying they're already MySpace, the game is over. That not by any stretch. What I am saying is that I think page views or content views are going to decrease, and I think we're already seeing that, and we're seeing that among teens first, and we're seeing that among other people. Everybody I ask, do you think Facebook's as interesting to you now as it was just 6 months ago? And I haven't had anyone say yes to that in months. So I think we'll all stay on Facebook. I think the degree to which we use it will decline dramatically. And as marketers, who cares if you have an account? If you're not, serving up 1 trillion page views and you're only serving up 500 billion page views, well, that's half as much likelihood that I can get to you whether I pay for it or whether I earn it.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that's interesting about Facebook is that most of the innovation in the last year or so has been on the advertising side. Ad options, ad alternatives, shoring up the native program with mobile, things like that. There really hasn't been a lot of innovation on the user side lately, and I think that's one of the things that contributes to sort of the like, it's feeling kind of boring, feeling kind of mature. Now, I suspect they've got some tricks up their sleeve. We'll see. I hope so for their sake, because it's starting to feel a little stale.
Yeah, so that's absolutely true, and I think if you look at the teen experience and where they're going, it's been part of that boredom in that they're moving to Instagram. Facebook finally admitted it in terms of their last Q3 call. They admitted that teens are coming in less. Exactly what I said. They're still have their accounts, but they're not in there daily like they used to be. And you can see from this chart that they're moving over to Instagram. Twitter's still strong, and those feeds are unfiltered. And the speed, Twitter, Facebook was complaining a month ago or so, hey, we have 5 times more content and discussion about TV shows than Twitter. Well, they certainly hide it well.
Right.
Because Twitter feels like it's much more dynamic when you're watching a live event on television than Facebook, because they've slowed down this feed and they have tried to make their algorithm smart enough to know who my friends are and who I want content from. And that's not doable. The world is too confusing. Likes are have different meanings for different people and for different times, for different content. And so, they keep showing me content from the same 10 people and updating it less and less frequently. It becomes boring. So to me, it's about the speed of the feed, and that's the solution. If they can increase the speed of the feed, Facebook becomes more interesting for me as a user, but it also means my content's going to be seen by more people, which doesn't make me stop paying. It makes me happy that I'm doing well organically and I'm getting closer to that 16% again, versus what you did to me, Facebook did to me in the last 18 months. They changed the game, and I think that's where the frustration comes from, and it correlates identically with the boredom teenagers and others are feeling with the platform.
Yeah, I think there's two other pieces there, and I always look not only at the research but just anecdotally, right? As a parent of a teen and a preteen, I just look at what they do, and neither of my kids has logged onto Facebook once in the last 6 months. Not once, not ever. They both have accounts, but they've never logged in. It's 100% Instagram, Twitter, Snapchat, period. Well, and Pinterest for my daughter.
So 100%.
What's that? I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. Speaking of Instagram, Instagram is owned by Facebook. So while Facebook's numbers are down, Instagram's are up. And if you actually put those numbers together, we're seeing that it's actually better than that first column we're looking at Facebook. They're doing better. So.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that too, because of course when they wrote a $1 billion check for Instagram, people were like, "That's crazy. What are you thinking?" But now, even from a defensive perspective, it seems brilliant to me, because it's like, okay, look, if teens don't want to use Facebook, that's fine. They'll use Instagram. We're still gonna be able to insert advertising there. We're gonna get you coming or going. I think it's very, very wise, and I suspect that somebody, either Twitter, Facebook, or Yahoo, will buy Snapchat pretty quickly. Would be my guess. So part of it is that kids, my kids certainly are not using Facebook, but I think there's two other reasons for that, Jim, in addition to the speed. One is that Instagram and Twitter are native mobile applications, whereas Facebook has come a long way in terms of mobile, but it was never built for mobile. It was built for computers, and it feels like that. I mean, it's just from a pure customer experience standpoint, it's vastly easier to use Twitter and Instagram on a phone than it is Facebook, partially because Twitter and Instagram do far fewer things, right? They have a much tighter set of circumstances than Facebook does. And then the other thing, and I think this actually is the big reason why teens are fading away on Facebook, is because teens don't want to hang out on the social network that their parents are hanging out on.
Yeah.
Like, in what generation was that ever true? Like, oh yeah, let me hang out in the same restaurants, the same bars, the same social networks, the same websites, the same anything that my parents and hell, even my grandparents are hanging out with. Yeah, that's cool. Let me do that. I mean,
Absolutely.
So I mean, I think to some degree the bottom is dropping out of Facebook because they're victimized by their own success. And we've said for a long time that the fastest growing audience on Facebook are seniors, and that continues to be the case. But, you know, my kids who are 12 and 15 don't want to hang out on a social network where their grandma is, ever, under any circumstance. The technology can be, it can be telepathy based, and they wouldn't care. It's just
totally agree. But you know what I'm seeing now is several things. Instagram adding ads, very Facebook-like. Instagram being joined by people my age, 45 years old, and you know that's the same way it started with Facebook, sort of slowly. And I saw, you know, a woman with 2 kids. She, you know, to get the little notice, your friend joined Instagram. I'm like, oh, here it comes. Here it comes. What we're going to be talking about Instagram and too many parents and grandparents on it in 3 years.
No, I think that's probably true. It's sort of like alternative music now. It's like, what are you an alternative to?
Right. I was Instagram before Instagram was cool, right?
Right.
So teens definitely start these trends. I mean, they've been the trendsetters for who's going to what social platform and when. And Jay, going back to a point that you made about Twitter and just kind of the speed of the feed, Twitter went public. So are they going to be facing some of the same problems that Facebook is facing, where they're sort of battling with themselves over user experience while trying to make money?
Maybe. I mean, certainly they have to now pay off, right? I mean, you know, they have to increase their revenue substantially over the next 12 to 18 months. But the way promoted tweets work mechanically, I think, is much more comfortable and much less jarring to users than native advertising on Facebook. Partially, it's the fact that tweets are not inherently visual. I mean, they can be visual, but typically they're text, so it doesn't feel quite as jarring. And I think one of the challenges with Facebook, and I don't know if this is just marketers being foolish or something with their ad operations and insertion, but I see a tremendous amount, and I think we'll notice, I think we have a slide about this, a tremendous amount of untargeted or poorly targeted ads on Facebook, things that I have no interest in, both on the right rail and in the promoted posts area. I see a lot less of that, at least today, on Twitter. If I see promoted tweets, typically it's in the ballpark of what I might actually be interested in. Again, I don't know if that's just smarter marketers for now, more early adopter marketers on Twitter, or if it's inherent in their ad operations and their targeting. But I don't feel like ads, quote unquote, on Twitter are as disturbing to users as they are on Facebook. But that's just my opinion. I have no evidence of that other than my own belief system.
Jay, you bring up an interesting point, and Jim has said this before. You know, you say it's not the ads to blame; marketers are really to blame here.
Yeah, it's a little bit of both. I mean, Facebook, because they went public, they went pretty crazy with the ad selection for a while. They had 30-some formats. They've tapered it back. They've changed very quickly. So that's confusing to marketers. It's confusing to users, and it was very, very disruptive. You see Instagram taking a much more cautious approach, where they ran a fake ad for a couple days to see how people reacted to the format. That's smart, but the format is only a little bit of the problem, and it's us as marketers doing ads like the one on the screen here. Here's a married guy being shown how to meet 30-year-old single women. That's curious. And there's some really, I'm constantly getting served ads for Zumba DVDs. I'm not really sure what Zumba is.
Maybe that's a hint. Maybe somebody you know is serving those ads up to you, Jim.
It could be. I could use some more fitness. There's some truth to that.
And you are a noted lover of salsa music, so
that's true too.
It all works together. It may actually be the best ad ever.
I need to apologize to the Zumba DVD ad guy because I have disparaged him. But it's not only what we do. So Instagram's rolling out with 4 or 5 brands, Michael Kors, and well-respected brands, spending a lot of money and time to do nice visuals on there so they don't get yelled at. They're getting yelled at anyway. So when it's released to the world, which is what Twitter needs, or sorry, Instagram needs, the format's not going to be as high quality, and the reaction to the Michael Kors ad was really negative. And when it's this kind of stuff, meet 30-year-old women, coming into a 12-year-old's Instagram, the reaction is just going to be really negative.
One of the things that's interesting about all of this, I should write a post about this someday, is that fundamentally all of these companies are mimicking the original Google AdWords kind of ad insertion premise, right? From a targeting situation, the way keywords work, et cetera. And of course, Google didn't invent that. They stole it from Yahoo, which stole it from GoTo, which stole it from Overture. But it's all basically the way Google AdWords works, just rehashed. But one of the things that we don't talk about enough is Google has done an amazing job saving marketers from their own greedy impulses. Over the last 5 to 10 years, Google has put tremendous amount of technology in place that punishes marketers for ads that are poorly targeted. Right? If your ad doesn't get a good click-through rate, they just stop showing it, even if you're willing to pay tons of money. If your landing page is slow, they stop showing your ad. If your landing page is not relevant to the ad copy, they stop showing it. Google has turned down billions of dollars in potential revenue to make the ads in Google AdWords fundamentally relevant. Twitter does that a little bit, right? Twitter will stop showing your promoted tweet if it doesn't get a lot of engagements. Facebook, as far as I know, has not gone to those lengths to artificially control poorly targeted ads, and perhaps they should. What it requires is having the courage to leave money on the table, but in exchange, you're making the ads more relevant and more palatable to your user base.
Yeah, it's a tough balancing act for them because of the pressure to perform every quarter, which they did in the second quarter, which they did again in the third quarter. But they're going to have some suffering because of that, because of what you said in terms of user experience and in terms of marketer experience. I hear clients say they just keep coming in asking for more money. I had a great meeting with the Google Plus people, and they were talking about functionality and opportunity and things to do, and it was really a brainstorm of creative ways to use the Google Plus platform to improve marketing for our clients. And that's not the kind of stuff you get when the Facebook rep comes in to talk about the new ad product. And it needs to be more collegial and collaborative. And how do we win? Because I think what we're saying is advertising is a part of it. And so if they find a way to help me win, I'll support that with advertising versus finding a way to make me advertise and I have to figure out why I win.
So before we think about how we can win, we need to think about how we can fix this. Jay, you say in your book is all about building trust, not being transactional, but being helpful. Is this a good starting point on the road to recovery?
Absolutely. I think one of the things that I talk about a lot, and Gary Vaynerchuk, I think, coined this phrase originally, is that the problem with marketing today is that everybody wants to be a hunter and nobody wants to be a farmer. Everything is conspiring to make us think and act and do faster, but actually our customers want dinner and a movie first. Customers are not as stupid as we think. We don't have to lead people to water and then hold their head under the water until they actually buy from us. So my premise is that if you are helpful, if you create marketing that is inherently useful, if you create marketing that has intrinsic value, if you create marketing that customers actually want, then eventually those people will buy from you. It may not be today, it may not be tomorrow. Right? They say, what's the best time to plant a tree? Well, the best time to plant a tree would have been 20 years ago. The second best time to plant a tree would be today. And that's really what utility is all about, is thinking about a longer-term approach to marketing and business benefits.
Yeah, and I think particularly in an age of there's very little brand loyalty, and brand differentiation gets harder and harder as people copy features from one another, and so that connection to utility, it can be very, very powerful. There's lots of websites that'll let you connect all your your bank account, your savings account, and your 401k, and then email you a report and you can see it on your phone. But one of them is just so much more useful, so I get so much more utility out of it, that there's no way I'm going to switch regardless of the marketing. So, the utility of that, I think, is dead on. And right now we're seeing everyone copy Oreo and try and do a funny meme. And there's a place for that for certain brands, but I think for many more brands is what Jay's talking about here.
I tried to be funny with this clip art, but it didn't work.
It's beautiful clip art. It's fantastic.
Well, the Oreo example is a good one. I was actually in Toronto yesterday for the Mesh Marketing Conference, and the Oreo Canada team was talking all about how they do their real-time marketing and the entire program. And I knew this to be true, but I hadn't seen them actually present the case study. The amount of planning that goes into their quote-unquote real-time marketing is extraordinary. I mean, they spend more time thinking through and strategizing their real-time marketing than most people do thinking through and strategizing their not real-time marketing. So it's not like it's luck or a whim. They have all these processes set up to be able to approve things within 12 hours via legal. And they've got all these different people on the team looking for means and opportunities to participate. And it's just, this is not a crapshoot, right? It's not by the seat of their pants. And so sometimes to look spontaneous requires a lot of planning.
Right, and there's only certain brands where you buy them every week or have the opportunity to buy them every week. You walk by them in the store every week. You associate eating them with happiness. I mean, how many brands line up?
If you're eating a whole thing of Oreos every week, you got a problem. You need to get the Zumba DVD.
But I'm happy, Jay. So, but the point, I'll be happy till I kill over and die with a box of Oreos in my hands. But the point is they have a unique brand position where, a funny thing or a Super Bowl thing, even the Rainbow Oreo, there's just not a lot of brands who can do that. And Skittles is also another unique brand that just sort of has to remind people that Skittles are there. They don't have to go into the features and the benefits of Skittles, and it's just a big blob of sugar, right? But there's other brands, like we work with Fiat and we work with Samsung televisions, and those are both expensive, considered purchases that you buy once every few years. The approach cannot be Oreo's approach. It's just a different product bought for a different reason and a different time. So, we're really, as social media marketers, copying each other's success, where success is measured by engagement and shares and all that, which is fine, but that's not success. Like that's on the way to success, which is building a brand and selling product.
Yeah, no doubt.
So what's a good balancing act to be able to find this success?
Well, I've had several people say, "Wait a second, you're now saying we shouldn't buy it? I thought we had a Facebook budget." And I'm not saying it. I'm saying it on the cover, but I'm not saying it on Chapter 9, which is when do you use paid. And the big mistake, and I've seen millions and millions of dollars wasted on this, is people who buy fans, as we talked about, but they have no change to their content strategy. They have no change to their promotional strategy. They're just throwing up fans. And we talked about how you can engage them, but we've also talked about the opportunity cost of the money that could have gone into content creation, that could have gone into promotions that add value, that deepen the connection with a brand. And we did an earlier webinar with Dodge on how they did a promotion with Defiance, the TV show on Sci-Fi, and how half the people who signed up for the promotion signed up for Dodge product emails. So that's fantastic. That means we're reaching people who care about the product, and we have a potential long-term benefit because they've said, yes, please email me. So we're taking the money that should go into not only content, but promotions, but a balancing act, and paid has gotten too big for its britches. Paid needs to come down a little bit, and the owned, our own channels and our own websites, that hasn't gotten quite the attention it needs, and the earned needs to go beyond memes and content. I mean, that's, I think, my summary of how the balance should work.
So we have a couple questions from our audience, a post-Facebook world.
And apparently there are people in the audience, despite what it said on our webinar, that there were no people, so hi everyone.
Extreme technical difficulties, and we apologize if we don't get to your questions right now. We will certainly answer them later today on Twitter, so keep them coming. How does Facebook keep making more money if its core demographic is leaving and its ad units are ineffective?
Well, a couple things. Number one, I wrote a blog post about this, and somebody commented and said, who cared that teens are leaving? They don't pay for the ads. It made me laugh because they're the target audience of the ads, and if they don't see them, then people don't pay for the ads. So it's very important that people are leaving. But Facebook can make more money if they increase the feed. Honestly, I think it just comes down to that. It sounds simplistic, and they're doing this story bumping thing. Have you seen a story in your newsfeed that you saw and you commented on, and the next day it's at the top of your newsfeed again? It's their attempt to drive more engagement. It's wildly annoying. But it's a sign that they know the newsfeed is a problem, and that solution is not going to be the solution, but the solution is the newsfeed and the volume of content being shown. And I don't think they should go to a Twitter-like stream, but I think they need to take the harness off a little bit because their algorithms are not that good because no one can be that good.
Absolutely. Jay, do you have anything to add to that?
I just completely agree. I mean, there was a time, granted a while back, but there was a time when you could buy almost any clicks that you want in Google AdWords for 5 or 10 cents a click. Well, those days are long gone. But yet you can still get clicks, if that's what you're looking for, on Facebook pretty inexpensively, and those days will end.
So while we're on the subject of ads, another question that came in is Instagram and Pinterest both just launched ad products. How do you think this will impact their user base? Jay, why don't you take this one first?
I think Pinterest has the easiest time because essentially everything on Pinterest is an ad for something. I mean, the whole thing is essentially commerce at some level. So whether that is truly an ad or only indirectly an ad is somewhat immaterial. I think Pinterest also, because it is so commerce-oriented, is so much about shopping, has a lot of other monetization options. I mean, they could do, they could do commission splits very, very easily on the e-commerce side. So I believe over time that Pinterest is a really good bet from a financial perspective. Instagram struggles a little bit for the reasons that Jim talked about. They're a one-trick pony, right? It only does one thing. It's a picture or a video, so I guess it does 1.5 things. So their only option for now is native advertising or story bumping, things along those lines. That is a very limited palette of advertising alternatives to offer companies. So I think their success is going to have to come eventually, and obviously we're fast-forwarding a year or so, in finding other ways to create ad inventory, whether it's a new home screen that when you log into Instagram you see something at the very top automatically, or some other kind of option. But right now they just don't have a lot of arrows in the quiver.
Totally agree. And it also goes back to what the user's in the midst of doing. I'm on Pinterest to be inspired on fashions and products I can buy and products I haven't heard of. So I'm in a hunting mood and hunting, including in some cases acquiring. So I thought it was interesting. Pinterest, I don't think a lot of people remember this, but Pinterest used to put links, affiliate links, in the links to the websites.
Yep.
The problem was they didn't tell anyone they were doing it. So when it came out, it was a scandal. I think they should have said it from the beginning and rolled with it because they'd be making a gajillion dollars without an ad, and then they could add some ads and make $1.5 gajillion. That just, yeah, we own Pinterest. If we send you traffic and you have an affiliate program, we're in. I mean, why not?
Yeah.
So
I'll tell you what, when those guys go public, I'm buying. I don't care what the price is.
Yeah, there's a lot of opportunity there.
No doubt. The other thing that's interesting about Instagram is, so much of what you do in Instagram is in the moment and is location driven. I'm at this place. Here's a picture of what I see at this place in this snapshot in time. It's much more geo-specific than any other social network. I wonder why Instagram doesn't buy Foursquare and say, okay, well, if we know you're taking a picture of this place, here's some recommendations for other places around you that you should think about eating or hanging out or et cetera, and kind of making Instagram plus Foursquare more of a visual Yelp. I feel like that's a real opportunity for them.
Absolutely. And Google Maps just sort of announced, I think yesterday, the day before, that they're going to begin serving up recommendations to you in Maps based on what you searched for in Maps and in Google before. It's one part creepy and another part incredibly brilliant, because it can be, if they get it right, it can be incredibly useful or add utility.
Yeah. The challenge is that the Maps interface is a little tricky to begin with. So
yes,
that's all about the UX on that deal.
But it goes back to Google Plus. We haven't talked about them hardly at all in this thing, because I think everyone thought it was a Facebook, and as you realize that it's really a collection of tools. And they haven't figured out all the combinations of putting them together in interesting ways, and brands are going to do some of that in 2014 and 2015. They're not out of the game either.
Yeah, no doubt.
Definitely not. Well, that is all the time that we have for today. Jay, thank you so much for joining us. Jim, thanks for being here. Everybody, if you like what they said, go ahead and check out their books, earnitdon'tbuyit.com, and you can find Utility at utilitybook.com. Thanks again, everybody.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Jay.